The silence in the chamber shattered into a chorus of clicks, rumbles, and pulsing light. The projections of the leaders flickered as emergency priority channels overrode the diplomatic frequencies. For a full minute, it was pure chaos. The image of the Viril Queen dissolved completely, only to snap back with a sharper, more agitated hue. Her envoy, physically present in a tank of pressurized gas, scuttled sideways in distress. "They left," the Crotharth King stated, his grinding voice full of disbelief. The concept was alien. One did not leave. One negotiated, one maneuvered, one conceded or demanded. Walking away was an act of profound, illogical disrespect. It broke all the rules of the dance. A calculated display, hissed the Viril Queen's translator. A bluff to gain final concessions. They will return when they realize their isolation. But the solitude of cloud, swirling in muted, confused grays, did not seem to agree. Their vital signs, monitored by the chamber's scanners, showed no spike of emotional distress, no anger, no fear, only a steady, determined resolution. This was not a bluff. It was a conclusion. The Hearth King turned his obsidian gaze toward the only other physical being in the room of high status, the consensus head strategist, Min. She had been standing in the observation gallery, a silent, analytical shadow throughout the proceedings. She was a veteran of the Asteroid Wars, a woman whose face bore a single, faint scar along her jawline, a souvenir from a hull breach. Her reputation for cold, flawless logic was known across species. "Strategist Min?" the Hearth King rumbled. "Explain this human behavior. Model their next move." Min did not speak immediately. She walked down the steps to the main floor, her boots making soft sounds on the polished stone. She stopped where Jin and Sue had been sitting. She placed a hand on the back of Jin's chair, as if feeling for residual warmth. Her eyes, sharp and dark, scanned the empty space. "You asked the wrong question," she said, her voice level. "You ask for their next move. That implies they are still playing our game." "They are not." "What does that mean?" Pulsed the cloud, its color shifting to a curious yellow. "It means they have performed a final calculation," Min replied, turning to face the assembled holograms and the Hearth King. "They have looked at your offer, your cage of peace, and they have looked at the alternative, total war with the entire galactic consensus. And their models have told them that war, even with its near-certain annihilation, offers a higher probability of preserving what they call the human spirit than your peace does. So they have chosen war, not because they think they can win in a conventional sense, but because they believe they can make losing unbearable for you." A wave of dismissive clicks came from the Viril envoy. "Irrelevant. Our combined fleets outnumber theirs 1,000 to 1. Our technology is superior. A war would be a swift cleansing operation." Min tapped the console on her wrist. A large holographic map of the Orion Cygnus arm, the primary human territory, sprang to life above the cracked table. "Is it? You are thinking of fighting the United Terran Accord, a centralized government with planets, shipyards, command nodes. Target those, and the body dies," she zoomed in. "But they are already dissolving that body." New data, intercepted from the last open human channels in the past hour, streamed across the display. It showed the public networks of Earth and the major colonies. The official government seals were fading, replaced by dynamic, shifting symbols. A gear inside a shield, a neuron surrounded by stars, a hammer over an anvil. Official broadcasts were fragmenting into thousands of localized, encrypted streams. "They are initiating what our intelligence calls the Scorched Sky Protocol. It is not a military tactic. It is a societal one." Min pointed as lines of code and schematics flashed by. "They are disbanding their central authority. They are breaking their civilization into autonomous, self-sufficient units, city-states on planets, individual ships. orbital habitats. Each will have the knowledge to build, to fight, to communicate in secure, peer-to-peer networks we cannot jam because there is no central hub. The Hearth King leaned forward. They will become disorganized. Weak. No, Min said, her tone final. They will become a virus. A ghost. You cannot surrender to a ghost. You cannot negotiate with a virus. You can only try to exterminate it cell by cell across the entire vastness of their territory. She pulled up a predictive simulation. A consensus fleet, represented by a solid blue sphere, entered human space. The sphere broke apart to engage targets' planets' shipyards. But as it did, thousands of small red dots erupted from everywhere. From asteroids, from comets, from the dark side of moons, from civilian freighters that suddenly opened hidden weapons bays. The blue sphere was overwhelmed, not by a larger force, but by 1,000 tiny cuts, swarming, adapting, and then melting back into the dark. They will not defend their planets in the way we expect. They will let you land, and then the very soil will fight you. They will not protect the shipyards. They will have moved the important ones into hiding months ago. Every human you encounter will be a soldier, an engineer, a bomb. Their greatest weapon is not a plasma cannon. It is their individual, terrifying ability to improvise. A child with a toolkit and a theory could disable a dreadnought if given the right access, and they will give themselves that access. The solitude of cloud darkened to a deep, worried purple. You describe a galactic-scale suicide. I describe a galactic-scale threat, Ming corrected. They have calculated that the cost of wiping them out will be so high, so draining in resources and lives, that the consensus itself might not survive the aftermath. The Croth would be weakened. The Veyril hives would be decimated. The economy would shatter. They are betting that you are rational, and that your rational self-interest will not pay that price for a cage they have already refused to enter. The chamber was quiet again, but now the quiet was filled with a new chilling understanding. The terror was no longer about an insult. It was about logistics. It was about the cold, hard math of extinction. The Viril Queen finally spoke, her clicks slower. You suggest they have already won. They have changed the game, Min said. We offered them a loss of freedom. They have chosen a path where the only options are their total freedom, or a mutual destruction so profound it has no winner. By walking away, they have forced us to choose. Let them be, or risk everything we have built to make them not be. She looked at the empty chairs, then at the archway Jin and Sue had used. They did not leave in anger. They left because the conversation was over. The next words will not be spoken here. They will be written in fire and void. And they have already decided they are willing to write them. The question now is, are you? The Hearth King looked at his stone hands, hands that could crush metal, but could not grasp this formless enemy. The solitude of cloud condensed into a small, tight sphere of anxious light. The united front of the galactic consensus was gone, replaced by the silent, terrible arithmetic of fear. They had wanted to put the humans in a box. The humans had just shown them they were the wildfire, and you cannot put a wildfire in a box. You can only watch it burn and hope the wind does not blow your way. The signal began on Earth, but it did not come from a government building or a military base. It came from a distributed network, a ghost in the system that had been waiting for a trigger. It bypassed all official channels and appeared everywhere at once. On public screens in city squares, on personal communicators, on the view screens of deep space freighters and mining rigs on the moons of Jupiter Dot. It was Jin, the ambassador. He was not in a grand office or on a flagship bridge. He stood in what looked like a simple, plain room with a gray wall behind him. He wore the same gray suit, now slightly rumpled. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear and direct. They offered us a future. He said, his voice calm, without the grand tone of a leader making a speech. It was the tone of a man explaining a difficult truth. They called it peace. In this future, we would be safe, but we would not be us. Our children would fly starships that only go where they are told. Our scientists would only solve problems they are allowed to see. Our stories would only be about the past, because the future would have a ceiling. He paused, letting the words sink in across 100 worlds. A chain does not care if it is made of gold or iron. It is still a chain. They offered us chains. We choose the void. We choose the unknown. We choose each other. There was no call to arms. No declaration of war. No list of enemies. The message ended there. The screen did not go black. Instead, it split into 1,000 and 1,000,000 different streams. Schematics for converting a standard water purification pump into a plasma torch. Basic code for building a secure, local communication web. Diagrams showing weak points in the hull design of a Viril frigate, taken from battles fought months ago. The knowledge was not locked away. It was set free. And humanity changed. On a bustling orbital platform around Mars, a young engineer named Day watched the main screen in the docking bay go from Jin's face to a complex set of engineering specs. Around him, the noise of panicked chatter died down. He looked at his sister Yoon, who operated the cargo management AI. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. "They want our FTL drives," Day said, more to himself than to her. Eun nodded. "The Kim So-yeon is in dry dock. She's scheduled for a drive refit next week." Day was already moving, pulling up the ship's schematics on his workpad. The Kim So-yeon was a civilian deep space hauler, a big, slow beast of a ship. The new consensus-approved drive they'd install. It's half as fast. It has a governor. A limiter. Yoon joined him, her fingers flying as she accessed the platform's material inventory. "We have the old drive components in the salvage yard. We also have the high-yield capacitors from the old mining lasers they decommissioned last month." They looked at each other. The unspoken question hung in the air. What are we doing? The answer was in Jin's words. We choose each other. The Kim So-yeon wasn't a warship, but it was theirs. And it could be made into something that could run, hide, and maybe, if needed, bite. "Let's get the crew," Day said, his voice firm now. "We're not installing their cage. We're upgrading our teeth." On Earth, in a massive server farm that usually handled global entertainment streams, a different transformation was happening. A young woman named Hana, whose job was to optimize data flow for video games, stared at her monitors. The official government orders had stopped coming an hour ago, but a new protocol, tagged with the symbol of a neural network, had just activated itself on her system. It asked a simple question: utilize idle processing capacity for distributed tactical analysis? YN. It was not a command. It was an offer. Hana looked out the window at the city. It was not burning. People were not screaming. They were looking at their devices, just like she was. They were all being given a choice. She thought of her brother, a pilot on a frontier colony. She pressed Joy. Instantly, her servers, designed to simulate vast fantasy worlds, began crunching a new kind of data: stellar maps, gravitational fields, probable paths of large alien vessels. They were no longer just playing games. They were running simulations for survival. This was happening everywhere. A chef in a lunar colony studied the diagrams for hydroponic sabotage, learning how to starve an invading force. A school teacher on a remote outpost downloaded basic manuals for field trauma surgery. A team of programmers who used to make addictive apps for communicators now worked day and night to refine the peer-to-peer network code, making it invisible, untraceable, and resilient. There was no central leader. No one person was in charge. But a direction was set. The direction was outward and independent. The great, centralized machine of human civilization was deliberately breaking itself apart into a million smaller, smarter, self-sufficient pieces dot in a quiet laboratory on a research station. An old scientist named Park watched his younger colleagues argue. Some wanted to hide their work on molecular bonding. Others wanted to destroy it so it couldn't be taken. Park listened and walked to the main console. He entered a command. The entire research database on their new, incredibly strong composite material research, funded for peaceful construction, was encrypted and uploaded to the public network. It was tagged for structural reinforcement of civilian habitats, or for hull armor. Use as needed. We do not hide, he said to the stunned room. We do not destroy. We share. If one of us remembers, we all remember. If one of us can build, we all can build. They think they are fighting an army. They are wrong. They are fighting an idea. And you cannot kill an idea with a plasma beam. Across human space, the signs of military preparation were weirdly absent. No giant fleets were massing. No planetary shields were being raised. Instead, civilian ships changed their registration codes and vanished into the dark. Prefabricated habitats were disassembled and loaded onto freighters. Libraries, both digital and physical, were copied and scattered. The galactic consensus sensors, pointed at human worlds, saw the light of civilization still shining. But the transmissions they could understand were fading, replaced by a strange, encrypted silence that buzzed with immense, hidden activity. It was the most frightening thing of all. A people not screaming in defiance, but quietly, methodically, disappearing into their own shadows, taking all their sharp and dangerous knowledge with them. The cage door was open, but the animal was no longer inside. It was everywhere and nowhere, watching from the dark with 1,000 different eyes. The consensus needed a response. They could not let the human defiance stand unanswered. The Veil, in particular, demanded action. Their pride was stung. A show of force, they argued, would bring the humans back to their senses or shatter their resistance before it could fully form. The Croth Hearth King agreed. The solitude of Cloud was uncertain, but did not eject. The strategy, they decided, would be a precise, overwhelming demonstration. They selected the Proxima Centauri system. It held a moderate human outpost, a scientific and logistical hub. It was not a core world, but it was important. Destroying it would prove their point without pushing humanity to total, immediate war. Or so the plan went. A Varil task force, 15 crystalline dreadnoughts known for their perfect, ordered formations and devastating beam weapons, jumped into the system. The Admiral, a veteran of crushing rebellions on a dozen worlds, expected to see panic. He expected human defense ships to scramble, to form a pathetic line between his fleet and the planet. He expected distress calls, last stands, and finally, a surrender. Proxima Station hung in the silent dark, its lights twinkling. No ships rose to meet them. No weapons powered up. The system traffic control channel emitted only static. A flea. The Viril Admiral clicked to his second. Scan the station and the orbital shipyards. Target primary infrastructure. Disable. Do not obliterate. We will show them the cost of their pride, then offer terms again. The dreadnoughts spread out, moving with elegant, synchronized purpose. Their long-range scanners swept the station, the shipyards, the nearby asteroid belt. They detected minimal life signs, as if the station had been mostly evacuated. They found no hidden weapons platforms. It was, according to all their data, a nearly empty shell. They moved closer. On the bridge of the lead dreadnought, a minor alert chimed. A junior officer reported a slight anomaly in the secondary power grid. A capacitor was draining faster than normal. It was logged as a minor maintenance issue. Minutes later, on a second ship, the navigation system flickered. For a microsecond, the star chart displayed was not of the Proxima system, but of a completely fictional constellation from a human children's story. The system corrected itself. The officer assumed it was a glitch from scanning the human datanets. Then, the main lights on the third dreadnought dimmed. Life support switched to backup, then back to primary, then to backup again in a confusing cycle. Alarms began to sound, soft at first, then more urgent. Report. The Admiral demanded. Systems are unstable, Admiral. We are experiencing multiple simultaneous non-critical failures. It is as if the ship's mind is becoming confused. On the fifth dreadnought, the weapons array suddenly powered down completely, refusing all commands to restart. The Admiral felt the first cold trickle of something that was not fear, but profound disorientation. This was not combat. This was sickness. It was then that they came. Not from the station. Not from a hidden fleet. They came from the asteroid belt. A cloud of small, fast shapes, no bigger than a Varil shuttle. There were hundreds of them. They moved not in formation, but like a swarm of insects, each darting and weaving independently, yet all moving toward the same goal. They were angular, ugly things, clearly built from spare parts in haste. Some had mining laser housings as weapon mounts. Others seemed to be little more than engines wrapped around a single missile. They did not attack the dreadnoughts head-on. They zipped in close, under the coverage of the big ship's point defense weapons, which were themselves suffering from targeting errors. The small craft's attacks were precise, surgical. They fired not at the main hull, but at sensor clusters, at external communication arrays, at the delicate crystalline structures of the engine emission ports. One small craft, painted a reckless bright red, flew directly toward the Admiral's ship. It did not fire. It simply transmitted a tight beam data burst directly at the dreadnought's main receiver. Then it peeled away and vanished back into the swarm. On the bridge, the communication officer translated the burst. It was a simple schematic. It highlighted the exact power conduit that had first malfunctioned, tracing it back to a specific, non-critical data port that had been passively scanned by the dreadnought when it entered the system. The virus had entered there. The schematic was signed, Proxima Coding Club, Session 1. The Admiral stared at the message. A club, not a military unit. A club. The swarm continued its work for 3 more minutes. 3 dreadnoughts were left drifting, their engines dead, their weapons silent, their crews struggling to reboot basic systems. The others were harassed and blinded, their beautiful crystal hulls scarred by crude weapons. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, the small craft disengaged. They did not press the attack. They did not try to destroy the helpless ships. They simply turned and fled back into the asteroid belt, their signatures fading from the Varil sensors. Silence returned to the Proxima system. The Varil task force was wounded, humiliated, and utterly confused. A new signal broadcast on all general frequencies. It was a human voice, young, calm, and tired. Varil Task Force. This is Commander Tay of the Proxima Design Collective. You can repair your ships. It will take you approximately 6 standard cycles. The weapon that disabled them took us 6 hours to design after we saw you jump in. We are not hiding. We are learning. And we are learning faster than you can adapt. There was a long pause. The Admiral listened, his mandibles frozen. Go home, the voice said, final and firm. Tell your leaders the next lesson will be fatal. There is no peace to negotiate. There is only a boundary you must learn not to cross. Proxima out. The channel went dead. The Admiral looked at the tactical display. His mighty dreadnoughts, symbols of virile order and power, were sitting ducks. The human station still twinkled, untouched, in the distance. They had not even deemed it worth defending with a fleet. They had defended it with an idea and a virus written by what sounded like a group of children. He gave the order. The task force, those that could still move, formed a ragged, shameful group around their crippled sisters. They began the slow, careful process of linking tow cables. There would be no bombing of the station, no demonstration of power. There was only a retreat, broadcast on open channels for the entire galaxy to see. The message was received, far clearer than any human weapon could have sent. The humans were not fighting a war of resources or territory. They were fighting a war of cognition. They had turned the battlefield into a classroom, and the first lesson had just ended. The Varil had received a failing grade. The terror in the Grand Conclave was no longer theoretical. It had a name, Proxima, and it had proven that the humans were not just willing to fight. They were willing to reinvent the rules of fighting every single time. The Grand Conclave chamber felt different now. It was the same beautiful room, the same soft light, the same shimmering holograms of power. But the crack in the fused glass table, made by the Hearth King's fist, split the reflection of every leader. It was a permanent flaw in their perfect unity. The news from Proxima Centauri had arrived, not as a triumphant report, but as a quiet, shameful data packet from the humiliated Varil admiral. The silence was heavier than before, thick with a shared understanding that had curdled into dread. The Varil Queen's projection was dim, her clicks subdued. The attack was unconventional. Our technology was not defeated. It was confused. The Hearth King did not roar. He sat like a mountain, contemplating its own erosion. They did not fight the ship. They fought the idea of the ship. How do you wage war on an idea? The solitude of clouds swirled in slow, melancholic silver and blue. We observed the human networks after the event. There was no celebration, no boasting. The Proxima Design Collective released the virus code publicly, with notes for improvement. Another group, calling itself Orion's Shield, began suggesting better hull designs for the swarm craft. They are treating this not as a battle, but as a shared project, a problem to be solved together. Strategist Mean stood once more in the center of the room. She had not spoken since the report came in. Now, all eyes turned to her. She did not look vindicated. She looked weary. "The calculation is complete," she said, her voice echoing faintly. "They have proven the model. At Proxima, they demonstrated the core principle. Any single point of failure, a government, a fleet, a planet is a weakness. They have eliminated those points. Humanity is no longer a target. It is an environment. A hostile, intelligent environment that learns and adapts faster than we can devise new tactics." She pulled up the galactic map. Human space was no longer marked as a solid color. It was a vast, shimmering field of interconnected dots, constantly shifting, with no central hub. To win a war against them, we would not need to defeat an army. We would need to sterilize a galaxy. We would have to find every asteroid base, every hidden colony ship, every encrypted server buried in the crust of a dead moon. And for every one we destroy, 10 more would learn from its destruction and become better at hiding, better at striking back. The Varil Queen emitted a sharp click of frustration. There must be a way. A political solution. We must reopen communications. With whom? Min asked simply. Ambassador Jin does not have that authority anymore. Commander Tay from Proxima speaks only for his collective. The engineer Day on Mars speaks for his ship. The teacher on a frontier world speaks for her students. There is no one to call. The phone, as the humans would say, is off the hook. They have decentralized their diplomacy, too. It was then that a soft priority chime sounded on Min's private console. It was a peer-to-peer communication, routed through a maze of relays untraceable. The authentication code was one she recognized from years ago, from a joint military exercise before the humans had joined the wider galaxy. It was from Sue, the human strategist who had walked out with Jin. The message was text-only in the universal code. It contained no demands, no threats. It was a single, stark question. Ask them, what is the price of a cage when the bird has already learned to breathe in the vacuum? Min read it. She felt a cold clarity wash over her. She looked from the despairing Varil Queen to the brooding Hearth King, to the anxious Cloud. They were waiting for her, their strategist, to give them an option, a weapon, a path to victory. She knew then there was none, not the kind they understood. We have been thinking about this wrong, Min said, her voice hollow. We have been trying to solve a problem of containment. The problem has solved itself by becoming uncontainable. They are not in a cage. They have become the sky. She turned off the galactic map. There is only one move left, and it is not an attack. It is an admission. The Hearth King leaned forward. An admission of what? Of defeat, Min said, and the word did not cause an uproar, because in their hearts they all already knew it. Not a military defeat, a philosophical one. We sought to impose our order, our peace, on a force of nature. You cannot make a hurricane peaceful. You can only track it, respect its power, and stay out of its path. She began drafting a new document on the main screen. It was not a treaty. It was a unilateral declaration. We, the Galactic Consensus, hereby recognize the territory of human-settled space as a sovereign environmental phenomenon, she recited as she typed. All current consensus laws and structures are hereby acknowledged as inapplicable within its boundaries. The consensus renounces all claims to oversight, regulation, or intervention within said space. The sole interaction desired is a mutual, permanent non-aggression pact. The leaders stared at the words. Sovereign environmental phenomenon. It was not a political classification. It was a scientific one. It described a storm, a nebula, a black hole. It was a way to say, this is not a peer. This is a fact of the universe. We must live with it. We are. Surrendering? Clicked the Varil Queen, her pride warring with her survival instinct. We are accepting reality, Min corrected. We are choosing to survive. We are buying our continued existence with the only currency they will now accept. Our complete and total absence of control. We leave them alone, forever, or they will teach us, over and over and over again, in ways more creative and terrible each time, until there is nothing of us left to teach. She looked at the cracked table, then at the archway. They walked away from peace because our peace was a lie. The only real peace is the peace of distance, the peace of knowing that some stars belong to them, and we will never go there. With a final decisive tap, she sent the declaration. It was broadcast on all channels, unencrypted for anyone to hear. It was not addressed to any human leader. It was addressed to humanity itself, a message thrown into the strange, new ecosystem they had become. There was no immediate response, no acknowledgement. The channels remained quiet, filled with the buzz of human data streams they could no longer decipher. The leaders sat in their chamber, their terror slowly settling into a numb, hollow resignation. They had watched the humans walk away from their table. Now they had to accept that the humans had walked into a new universe, one they had built for themselves in the space between the stars, and they had no intention of ever coming back. The meeting was adjourned, not with a bang, but with the silent, terrifying understanding that the galaxy had just gotten much, much bigger and infinitely more strange. And in a small corner of it, The birds who breathed vacuum were finally, completely free.